Hi there, I'm Chris Morris. Welcome back to Good News and Lightmaster of the Month. So this month, the theme, I kept asking, what's the theme for this month? Asking my internal guides, and there was complete silence until yesterday. Yesterday was the day of the March for Our Lives. And the theme came into this cohesion of unity and connection and unity. So this past month, so February 14th, here in the United States, we had that shooting at Parkland High School in Florida. And then on March 14th, we had the National School Walkout, where at a certain time, students walked out for 17 minutes in honor of the 17 lives lost. And that was the beginning of building momentum for this March for Our Lives movement and protests, which happened worldwide. They happened globally on the 24th of March. So there's different narratives around it, right? There's different things that people believe about it. And this was a huge movement, and it was started from these students from Parkland High School who had just been fed up. They were the ones that just took a bigger action to create this groundswell movement to actually start to change some of the gun laws and some of the gun provisions that we have here in the United States. There's a quote by John Muir that says, "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it bound fast by 1,000 invisible cords that cannot be broken to everything else in the universe." So this is one of the things that we forget in these conversations of differing beliefs. These students have started a movement, and there's been different conversations about who's behind the movement and that kind of thing. Bottom line is, it started with these students, and they were passionate. They had a voice, and they wanted to live, basically. They wanted to live. So one of the things that we're missing in our bigger connection to our friends, neighbors, and colleagues is this inherent knowledge that we are inextricably connected. We cannot take one piece out without pulling on other pieces. It's actually the same way in our body. Our fascia works that way. Our fascia, so if we're talking micro, individual, with macro, society, and globally. The fascia is our organ of support and communication, and it's interlinked with every other system in our body. That's actually how we work in relationship with both other humans. So it has been said by my friend and teacher, Steve, that humans are the highest of the animal realm, which is absolutely true. We have biology that is related to primitive animals, to that reptilian brain, and then we've built on that. We've evolved from that. And when we are the highest of the animal kingdom, and when we try to separate ourselves out, which is one of the things that we've been doing as humans, we've been moving towards this dominant energy, this kind of dominating top-down, we can call it whatever we want, but this hierarchy of status, for lack of a better word at the moment. We have tended to put ourselves outside of this loop of interconnectedness. Not everybody, of course, but as a general whole, we've been moving that way for a long time. And one of the things that we're realizing on a very visceral level is that we are interconnected. One of the things that I found lacking in these conversations around, at this moment in time, the hot topic in the States is gun control and gun reform. And one of the things that's been lacking is this sense of empathy from one side to the other. What I've noticed in having conversations is that people who are afraid of their gun rights being taken away, they're actually afraid. They're afraid just like the other side is afraid of losing their lives. Now, they're afraid for different reasons. But if we don't find those ways to get the connections to people that actually feel different from us, so there'll be some people that are so far away that you cannot even have a conversation, but there'll be some people that are close enough in with differing views that you'll be able to have a conversation. For me, when I work with clients in one-on-one, one of the questions that I'm always asking is, what's underneath that? And sometimes I'm asking it verbally, and sometimes I'm asking it through touch, and sometimes I'm asking it through intuition. and what's underneath that, right? Because there's always something underneath it. And most of the time it gets to there's a fear there. And that's our primal animalistic response. Now we're evolving into these higher centers. So it takes this acknowledgement and then also this feel of interconnectedness. So empathy is the ability to put ourselves in another's shoes, right? To imagine what it's like to be in another person's shoes. So I can do that very easily with these people that end up getting honest and talking vulnerably about what they're afraid of. I can put myself in their shoes. I know what it's like to be afraid. Now, an empath is a little bit different because an empath literally feels what other people feel. And that makes it a little bit more challenging to have conversations, because when we are so overwhelmed with sensation and feeling, then we can't have those deeper conversations that actually get to the root of things. So one of the things that we have to be able to do as individuals is A, know how we're made, and B, actually find ways to make the connection. So if we're overwhelmed, we have to connect in first and find whatever stabilizes us and gives us solid ground. Once we're there, then we're able to have boundaries, because we have to have boundaries. People may or may not honor them. We have to have boundaries, and then we figure out how we can relate, what information we want to share, what love, connection, feelings of understanding do we want to share. If we sow divisiveness, we're going to get more divisiveness, right? So what are we creating in our world, and how are we working towards unity and connection, which is our inherent natural state? We cannot be disconnected from anything in this universe, which is mind-blowing, but it's also really beautiful when we feel that, when we truly feel that. Okay, on to good news. There's a mathematician at UC Berkeley here in the United States that theorizes that it is possible to survive in some benign black holes. And he found this, and he wrote this up in a recent study. If we traveled into these black holes, Peter Hintz says, he theorizes that our past would literally be stripped from us and our future would have infinite possibilities. So I wanted this story in there, but I wasn't really sure why. And then as I looked further into it, they talked about if you try to go into a small black hole, that it wouldn't work. We would be ripped to shreds. But the supermassive black holes, like at the center of our universe, theoretically, so this is all in math, the way that they studied this. They haven't literally done it, and they're not going to literally be able to do it at this point in time. But the math says that theoretically we would be able to move into these supermassive black holes without being annihilated, basically. And they talked about determination would be eliminated. And a determination, they just talked about being this past, present, future, like our future is dependent on our past. Our future is determined on our past. That would disappear. And the future would have infinite possibilities, which is pretty mind-blowing considering the things that we've talked about in class. For now, Peter Hintz says this is only a question that can be studied mathematically, but it has philosophical and even physical implications, which makes it very cool. So this was an interesting piece of science that's actually jumping along with this idea that we've moved into a different reality. Very cool. Okay, also in the cosmic realm. So I wanted to take this bigger and wider first. So also in the cosmic realm, auroras exploded over Finland as Earth entered a stream of solar wind flowing from a sprawling hole in the sun's atmosphere. So on March 22nd, our planet Earth moved deeper, right, past, present, is moving deeper into a stream where it will experience fast-moving rivulets of solar winds. So these solar winds and geomagnetic storms are not that huge in the big scheme of things. They're pretty minor. And it's not a big deal, but the auroras were amazing. And we've talked about these waves of change, these waves of energy coming in. And these waves of energy are coming not necessarily from the planet. They are coming, and our planet is coming into relationship with them. So this is just one of those types of things, may or may not be related. The bigger ones are supposed to be coming more towards the end of the year. We are preparing, we are practicing, so that's a good thing. In another report, it was said that nature is so good for you that even watching it on TV improves well-being. In one study, participants viewed a few minutes of the documentary Planet Earth and felt 46% more awe and 31% more gratitude than participants that watched the news, don't watch the news, or comedy. So just watching the Planet Earth on TV has inspired awe and gratitude. So this Planet Earth is an amazing, interconnected resource to us. On March 1st, the company Lego swapping out its plastic for plants. Swapping out plastic for plants. Lego finally found a sustainable solution to plastic from the use of sugarcane. They have started production on a new line of Lego elements made from plant-based plastics sourced from sustainably grown sugarcane. Lego is starting with plant-based Lego elements of leaves, bushes, and trees for this plant-based solution, but more is coming. Lego also has introduced a new set honoring NASA's women, and it contains computer scientist Margaret Hamilton, mathematician Katherine Johnson, first U.S. woman in space Sally Ride, first Black U.S. woman in space Mae Jemison, and astronomer Nancy Grace Roman. That's very cool. Okay, in the environment, Bangladesh is installing solar power systems in 5 million homes. It's one of the world's biggest off-grid renewable programs. They are also working on solar power irrigation pumps, which will reduce carbon and actually will give access to people for electricity and clean water. That's awesome. China actually created a solar farm that looks like a panda. That's awesome. I love that one. And also in Norway is building a city that will produce more energy than it consumes. The new energy positive city will be next to Oslo Airport and will sell excess energy to surrounding cities. It will have electric transportation, both public and driverless cars, and they plan to use green technology and design. This new city will take around 30 years to build. So part of the reason that I put these not quite here, these dreams into this report is as things are dissolving and changing and breaking down, we need to have new stuff in there that's filling the void, right? New stuff in there that's moving us in a way that actually creates this interconnection and this unity and working with harmony with nature. Paris is planning a huge forest 5 times larger than Central Park. They aim to plant more than 1 million trees, and it will have hiking trails, observation decks, and conservation areas. Approval might take a long time. Politicians have been arguing over the best use for this land for 15 years. Also in the environment, the Chesapeake Bay, which is the largest estuary in the United States, has had no grass since 1972. Scientists have recently seen development of seagrass beds where they've never seen them before. The plants are telling a story that conditions are improving. The report stated that the area covered by seagrass has dramatically improved over the past 30 years. So I actually used to live near the Chesapeake Bay, and I used to have to cross it going to college. It was a 3-mile bridge. It's huge. It's a huge place. And that had been the challenge, that it was essentially dying. And there has been a long-running campaign in Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania to reduce the nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, which farmers use to grow their crops in the area, and also from the manure from their cows and chickens also in the area. The farmers have done a fantastic job helping to lower the amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus that actually, as it goes into the bay, it actually takes out the growing conditions. So the seagrass actually helps to build the entire ecosystem. So now Maryland crabs are coming back. I love Maryland crabs. The farmers actually have a challenge, right? Because they're working towards their financial goal and supporting their family and that kind of thing. And they've done a fabulous job working with the environment here, whether it's been under duress and from laws or voluntary, it's actually making a difference. So that's a very beautiful thing, working in the right direction. Well done. Oh, this is one of my favorite stories of the month. Trees talk to each other in a secret language, it has been said. Canadian ecology professor Suzanne Simard learned that pine tree roots could transfer carbon to other pine tree roots, and this was discovered in a lab. It was discovered that trees have a vast network, a tangled web of hair-like mushroom roots, which are called mycelium, that allows the trees to communicate important messages to other members of their species and related species. She first heard about this in a lab, and then she took it out into the forest. And what she found was this shared information superhighway allows forests to behave as a single organism. Simard's work showed us that trees were more cooperative than competitive. So it had been previously postulated that trees are competing for sunlight and nutrients and that kind of thing. This showed that they actually are more cooperative than competitive. The trees communicate with one another by sending chemical and hormonal signals to each other via this mycelium to determine which trees need more carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and which have some to spare. They send the elements back and forth to each other until the entire forest is balanced. They share resources until the entire forest is balanced. That's amazing. That is amazing. There are hub or mother trees that provide nourishment for hundreds of smaller trees in the understory of her branches. The mother trees even recognize their own kin and send them more mycelium and carbon while reducing their own root size to make room for the younger ones. When a mother tree is injured or dying, that one of these hub trees, when they're injured or dying, they send their wisdom on to the next generation. So if you take out too many of these hub trees or these mother trees at once, the whole ecosystem collapses. So again, that interconnectivity. All right, shifting gears a smidge. On March 7th, 2018, a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously rejected the Trump administration's request to dismiss a climate change lawsuit filed by 21 youths aged 10 to 21, along with a well-known climate scientist named James Hansen. We actually reported on this last year. This group of students basically suing the government started with the Obama administration, saying you're not doing enough to take care of the climate for us, for the younger generations. The lawsuit that these kids brought before the courts seeks a court order that requires the government to quickly reduce carbon dioxide emissions. The suit now will head to trial. Also in this world of legislation in the courts, on March 19th, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to take up a Republican challenge to the newly redrawn Pennsylvania congressional map. So Pennsylvania has had what many places in the United States have come to have, and it's districts that are drawn that will either support Democrats or will support Republicans more strongly. So they're not fair districts. And both parties have done this. Both parties have created districts that support their party more than the others. So it creates this sense of unfairness. It's called gerrymandering. In March, the Supreme Court made Pennsylvania redraw the congressional map. We had a special election in Pennsylvania just recently, just in the past month. And it elected a Democrat, which they never thought would be able to be done. So part of this justice, using the system, we are a nation of laws at the moment, and this is creating a more equal playing field so the voice of the people can actually be spoken and be received and be supported. Switching gears again, YouTube is banning gun-related content in mass. They are restricting uploads featuring tutorials on how to modify guns, as well as videos that sell firearms and links to sites that do. So this is one of the ways that companies are actually stepping in to fill the void that our government is not doing. The leadership is not happening in the way that the people are asking for. So there's companies that are actually stepping up. There's companies that are actually working in the public interest and companies that are actually working in self-interest. At this moment, YouTube in this situation is working a little bit more for the public interest. Well done. the Parkland students, so these students that started the movement of the March for Our Lives, they've actually taken their platform. They've been giving a lot of media attention, and they've taken their platform and then they've actually used it to shine light on kids of color and other minorities that have not received the media attention that these guys have. So Parkland students went to DC and Chicago schools to stand with students of color and use their media platform to give these kids a voice. They spoke of being a unified front regardless of race, ethnicity, and religion, and to be the voice and agents of change in this movement for this time. Low-income areas of DC are disproportionately affected by gun violence, and actually DC has no voting representatives in Congress. That always blew my mind because Washington, D.C. is where the White House is. Washington, D.C. is not a state, it's a district. They call it the District of Columbia. They actually do have representatives, but these representatives don't get to vote. And Washington, D.C. area residents are actually some of the most low income and disproportionately affected people by guns, and they have no representation and no voice in this change. So this is really good. When you have a platform, when you have the ability to bring people together, to unite, regardless of race, ethnicity, religious backgrounds, unite to basically for the idea that we all want to live a healthy and prosperous life, then that's where change happens. Which leads us to our Light Master of the Month, our Honorary Light Master of the Month, which is people who are using their platform, their place, their voice to actually shine more light in the world. These kids that came out of the Parkland shooting, they came from the Parkland High School in Florida. They've actually started this movement. Now they've gotten help. They've gotten help from other adults, and they've definitely gotten help from other voices and other students and the media even. And there's been controversy around it. The NRA has actually tried to badmouth them, discredit them, using various stories, which actually, if you do some fact checking, you can find out that they're not true. It's actually quite shocking that the NRA is taking that position, and they're saying that these kids are used as pawns by all these other factions that are trying to take away the guns of the United States. We're not trying to do that. That's not what maybe some people are talking about that, but that's not the movement that is happening. Most people actually support the Second Amendment. What they want is common sense gun laws, and they want laws that help protect people as well as individual rights. One of the arguments of this liberties and individual rights is by people who actually already have their liberties and individual rights very well established. Now, if you don't have liberty and justice going hand in hand right now, that makes for things to get disproportionate for different types of people. This idea of liberties, these individual liberties, they have to be coupled with justice at this point in time, and justice is our system of laws. At some point that will evolve as humans evolve enough to actually understand this interconnectedness and feel it with one another. Until then, we need these laws that actually protect people and actually keep things equal. So these kids are actually using their voice and created this huge movement, which, as you all know, is worldwide. If you look on the March for Your Lives website, there's only 3 things that they're looking for. They're looking to pass a law to ban the sale of assault weapons, first and foremost. They're also asking for prohibiting the sale of high-capacity magazines, such as the ones used in the Parkland school shootings. So if you are able to shoot more bullets, you're able to kill more people. It's very simplistic. They're also looking to close the loophole in our background check laws that allow dangerous people who shouldn't be allowed to purchase firearms to slip through the cracks and buy guns online and at gun shows. A background check should be required at every gun sale with no exceptions. That's one of the arguments that I have seen around there, is that we already have these gun laws and they don't work. Well, there's loopholes because not every state has the same type of laws, and so you can get away with it through different kinds of channels and activity. We're trying to bring that into this connection, this unity of a cohesive understanding and a cohesive way that these gun laws are enforced. Some of the places I've seen is that they want to increase the age to buy guns from 18 to 21, which is great, but that's actually not on the March for Your Lives agenda that's on their website at the moment. The March for Our Lives organizers estimated that there were about 800,000 protesters that attended the gun control demonstration in Washington, D.C. on March 24th. If these numbers are true, the event would be the largest single-day protest in the history of the nation's capital. That's more than the Women's March of 2017, which was estimated about 500,000. More than 800 rallies took place around the globe in solidarity with the DC March, so both in the United States and globally. And that's, again, this interconnectedness, these points of light connecting with one another. As I was writing down these numbers, I was reading them to my son, who's not in high school anymore. He said, imagine that, students don't want to die, which is a very flippant but a very true thing. You know, this is the reality that these kids have had to live through. So these kids are bringing the voice. There's actually more kids that will be able to vote in the next presidential election than the baby boomers. And that's pretty amazing. So well done. Well done, kids. Both the Parkland students that started this, the ones that climbed on board, the people that spoke, these kids were eloquent. They were well-spoken. They know what they want. They want a life. They want freedoms. They want justice, just like everyone else, but they also want to be safe. We should be able to give it to them. Well done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so glad you're here. You matter. Your voice matters no matter how you put it out in the world. You matter. I'm so glad you're here. Keep on shining your light. Speaking of light, here's your moment of light.